The room had fallen into an almost unnatural silence the moment the white envelope touched the podium, as though the air itself understood that what was about to happen had spiraled far beyond a simple dispute. For days, the world had been glued to the tension between Robert De Niro and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a clash born unexpectedly on a Thursday morning panel about public trust and disinformation. That discussion had already been heated, but when De Niro suddenly leaned forward with the piercing intensity only he could summon and challenged Kennedy to an IQ test to live on air, the atmosphere had cracked open. "If you're so certain about your grasp on reality," De Niro had said, voice steady but edged with frustration, "then take a test with me. Let's settle it." The panelists had frozen. The audience drew in one long, collective breath. Kennedy's face had shifted between shock, disbelief, and restrained indignation. Then the moment detonated across the internet. Headlines blazed with the challenge. Late-night hosts mocked it. Pundits dissected it as though it were a geopolitical standoff instead of two public figures caught in a moment of emotional overload. What made it resonate wasn't the test itself, it was the rawness, the absurdity, and the deeply human need. Each man seemed to have to prove something, not necessarily to each other, but perhaps to the world watching. Still, despite the ridiculousness of the premise, people waited as though awaiting the results of an election. A neutral third-party evaluator was chosen, cameras barred from the testing room, and each man completed the assessment privately. The envelope sealed with their results became a symbol of pride, of conflict, of the strange new era where personal disputes became public entertainment. By Saturday evening, anticipation had reached a fever pitch. The press hall was overcrowded with journalists, commentators, influencers, and curious onlookers who had been following every update as though the fate of the nation rested on the 70-question exam. De Niro and Kennedy stood side by side, the tension between them thick but noticeably different from the earlier hostility. There was something quieter underneath it now, something reflective. When the moderator handed the envelope to De Niro, the cameras zoomed in so closely that viewers could see the tremble in his fingers. He opened it slowly. The hall grew so quiet that the faint hum of overhead lights suddenly seemed audible. For 36 long seconds, De Niro's eyes scanned the page. No one moved. Kennedy watched him carefully, his own expression a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. But then something happened, something no headline, no prediction, no online poll had anticipated. De Niro exhaled, and his entire posture softened. His shoulders sagged not in defeat but in realization. "I'm not reading this," he said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. A ripple of confusion passed through the room. Kennedy blinked, puzzled, and took half a step forward. "Why not?" De Niro swallowed, glancing at the envelope as though it were something fragile. "Because this whole thing a broken bar. It was the wrong fight. I made it about ego, about anger I didn't want to admit I was carrying, about proving something that doesn't matter." The vulnerability in his tone stunned the room. This was not the fiery confrontation the public had tuned in for. This was something far more human. Kennedy studied him for a moment, the defensiveness he had carried for days slowly fading. "It became a circus," he admitted quietly. "Maybe we were both using it to feel in control. But people don't need that from us." De Niro nodded, relief and regret mingling in his expression. "I let the moment get the best of me," he said. "I shouldn't have challenged you like that." And then, in a gesture that surprised everyone, Kennedy reached for the envelope, tore it cleanly down the middle, and set the pieces on the podium. Gasps filled the room, followed by a stunned stillness. "No test measures character," he said, his voice firm but calm. "And character is what we need more of from ourselves, from our leaders, from everyone watching." One person clapped, then another. Then a wave of applause surged through the hall, tentative at first, then powerful, as though people were hungry for a moment of grace. Hungry for something that reminded them that conflict did not always have to escalate, that ego did not always have to win. When De Niro and Kennedy shook hands, it wasn't the stiff, camera-ready handshake of political events. It was real, honest, and unexpectedly moving. By morning, clips of their exchange flooded social media. Comment sections, which had been venomous battlegrounds for days, filled instead with reflections, relief, and even gratitude. People wrote that they had needed to see a moment where two men acknowledged their flaws instead of defending them, where they chose humility over spectacle. The narrative, once charged with rivalry, now shifted to an unlikely story of reconciliation. The IQ test became irrelevant. The numbers that so many had demanded to see faded into unimportance. What remained was the image of two people stepping away from pettiness and choosing something higher. It sparked conversations across the country, and not about intelligence, not about politics, but about the courage it takes to admit mistakes, and the grace it takes to forgive them. The whole saga, absurd at its start, ended with a reminder the world rarely hears loud enough, that humility can end battles ego never will.